the most ancient of gods, an epic of Saturn and Janus and Chaos and Coelus and Terra and Jupiter and Surtur. In the earliest age, before temples rose and cities burned with the light of civilization, before men carved dominion from chaos or set their laws upon scrolls, there stood the sky, and beneath it the earth. From the great expanse of Coelum and the firmament of Terra was born a god of ancient mind and slow, terrible purpose, Saturn, first among the terrestrial gods. He came forth not as a roaring conqueror, but as a presence carved in granite and time, bearded, furrowed, cloaked in gray. His eyes carried the hush of centuries. In his hand he bore a sickle forged from eternity, its edge honed not on stone, but on the necks of ages. By his side stood Ops, soft-hearted yet firm, the mother of gods, whose womb bore power that could one day challenge the heavens themselves. But Saturn, grim prophet of cycles, feared that which he fathered. From the loins of time sprang sons, Hestia first, spared by the shroud of silence, then Demeter, then Hera. But when Ops gave him Jupiter, then Neptune, then Pluto, sons strong as storm winds, his terror awakened. A whisper wound through his soul. That which is born of you shall rise above you. So Saturn seized each newborn son and swallowed him whole. One by one they vanished into the abyss of his gut, devoured not in malice but in dread, for time feared the future it must bring forth. Yet Ops, weeping in secret chambers beneath the hills, wrapped a stone in cloth and gave it to her lord. Saturn, blind with fear and hunger, devoured it. And so, hidden deep within the folds of a mountain cave, the last-born son was nursed in secret. His name was Jupiter. Time moved on as it must, and when Jupiter came of age, lightning danced in his breath, and the stars gathered beneath his feet. With cunning from Ops and steel from the earth, he rose against the father who had birthed and betrayed him. The battle cracked the spine of the heavens. Saturn's sickle clashed with the thunderbolt of his son, and the heavens screamed. When the smoke cleared, the sky shook with new dominion. Saturn was cast down from his throne in Olympus, and the echoes of his fall were etched into the ribs of the world. He fled, a king unkinged, a god with no domain. But the earth, who had borne him once, bore him again. Over mountains and across wild rivers he came, and at last reached the edge of the known world, Italy, still untouched by empire, still young with promise. There, amid the forests and soft hills, ruled an ancient Italian deity named Janus Bifrons. Janus, wise beyond the measure of gods and men, beheld the fallen god and did not tremble. He saw in Saturn not defeat but memory, not a beggar but a bearer of golden knowledge. "Share this land with me," said Janus, "and teach us what time has taught you." Saturn took his hand. Together they built a realm called Latium, from the Latin later, to hide, for Saturn hid there from his past, and the land in turn hid secrets yet untold. Under Saturn's guidance the land awakened. Iron was softened to plowshares, and the people learned the rhythm of the seed. Fruit bowed low from trees without toil. No man hoarded, no hand stole. All ate in peace, and all were equal beneath the old god's gaze. There were no kings, no bondsmen. This was not yet empire, it was harmony. And so the poets would one day name this era the Golden Age. But Saturn, though gentle, was still time, and even the Golden Age could not last forever. The people, fearing the return of shadow, honored him in sacrifice, giving to time what time always took, life itself. Blood was spilled on Saturn's altars, a strange tribute to a king of peace, but one fitting to a god who had swallowed his sons. In centuries to come, when the name of Rome was thunder, and the gods were bound in marble, Saturn was still remembered. A festival was raised in his honor, the Saturnalia. For days, order dissolved and joy was law. The Senate did not gather. Schools shuttered their doors. Masters served their servants, who mocked them freely at the table. Purple cloaks, swirled on the shoulders of the lowborn, and laughter unchained climbed the rooftops. War paused, crimes lay unpunished. It was not chaos, it was memory, a living breath of Saturn's reign. No word is standing still, as it were, and meaning something once and for all, which a plain man can say without being laughed at for ignorance or for affectation. For instance, Saturnalia. To one man, it means a certain bundle of ritual many centuries dead, common to a particular district of Italy and practiced in midwinter. To another man, it means a lot of poor people having an exaggerated bean feast and thereby annoying the rich people. But it does not mean either of these things to the plain man. It means to the plain man occasion and specific occasion for turning things upside down and getting breathing space for a while from the crushing order of this world. That is what Saturnalia means to the ordinary user of the word, and note he has no other word by which to express the idea. So thoroughly has the thing died out since modern English was formed. I suppose the nearest word for it in English, when such feasts were still known in England, was the vague word misrule, and beside Saturn still stood Janus, his face doubled by mystery. One face looked forward, the other back, past and future bound in one visage. He was the god of thresholds, of doors, of beginnings, and Rome, which had mastered both time and war, kept his temple at his heart. In times of peace, the gates of Janus's temple were sealed, a promise that the world might breathe, but peace, like Saturn's reign, was a fleeting dream. In 700 years, only thrice were those gates closed. The last under Augustus, when prophecy stirred in Bethlehem and a new age prepared to dawn. And so they endure. Saturn, the sickled father, buried in myth yet lingering in the turning of the years, and Janus, the twin-faced guardian, standing watch over every ending and every beginning. And from their story, the year takes its shape, the festivals their form, and men their shadowed memory of an age when gods walked, when time bowed its head, and when for a moment the world was golden. The most ancient of all the Grecian deities was Chaos. The word chaos means a rude and shapeless mass of matter. In this condition, the poets suppose the world to have existed before an almighty voice called the confused elements into order. Chaos was the consort of darkness, and of them was born Terra, that is, the earth. Thus, the obscure fiction of the poets agrees with the inspired account given us by Moses. And the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. And God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. Terra, the earth, married Coelus, or heaven. Their children were Titan and Saturn. Titan was the eldest son, but he gave up his dominion to his brother Saturn, who thus became the king of heaven and earth. Saturn married his sister Ops, otherwise called Rhea. The reign of Saturn was called the Golden Age. The earth produced subsistence for its inhabitants. Without cultivation, culture, war was unknown. All things were in common. And Astrea, the goddess of justice, ruled over the actions of men. But Saturn had received his kingdom from Titan upon one condition. He had made a solemn promise to devour all his male children. His wife Ops hid one of these children and brought him up unknown to Saturn. This child was Jupiter. Titan, therefore, made war upon Saturn. He was assisted by his half-brothers, the gigantic Titans. Each of these Titans had 50 heads and 100 hands. They deprived Saturn of his kingdom and liberty. Jupiter then arose and assembled the modern gods on Mount Olympus. The Titans collected their forces on Othrys, an opposite mountain, and the war of the gods began. This war lasted for 10 years, when Jupiter called the Cyclops to his assistance, together with some mighty giants who owed to him their deliverance from confinement. These joined him in battle, and now Olympus was shaken to its foundation. The sea rose, the earth groaned, and the mighty forest trembled. The thunderbolts were hurled from the mighty hand of Jupiter. The lightnings flashed, and the woods blazed. The giants, in return, threw massy oaks at the heavens, piled the mountains upon each other, and hurled them at the thunderer. Jupiter was victorious and released his parents from captivity. But Saturn was afterwards overthrown and usurped by Jupiter and took refuge in Italy. He was highly honored there and became king of Latium, a part of Italy which lies along the Mediterranean Sea. He taught his subjects agriculture and other useful arts. He had a temple on the Capitoline Hill, and his festivals at Rome were called Saturnalia. Saturn was represented as an old man bent with age and infirmity. He held a scythe in his right hand, and in his left a child which he was about to devour. By his side was a serpent biting its own tail, which is an emblem of time and of the revolution of the year. When Saturn arrived in Italy, he was hospitably received there by Janus, king of that country. Janus was the son of Coelus and Hecate. He was drawn with two faces to intimate his knowledge of the past and the future. He first built temples and altars and instituted religious rites. His temple was very celebrated in Rome. It was built by Romulus, and Numa ordained that it should be opened in time of war and shut in time of peace. During the whole period of the Roman Republic, this temple was only shut twice. In religious ceremonies, the name of Janus was invoked first because he presided over gates and avenues, and it was supposed that no prayers could reach heaven but through his means. When Saturn was expelled from his throne, the ancient gods were nearly forgotten. They seemed to retreat behind mysterious clouds and mist. Jupiter became the first of the gods and the father and king of heaven. Homer thus describes the absolute power of Jupiter, he whose all-conscious eyes the world behold, the eternal thunderer, sat enthroned in gold, high heaven the footstool for his feet he makes, and wide beneath him all Olympus shakes. He spake, and awful bends his sable brows, shakes his ambrosial curls, and gives the nod, the stamp of fate and sanction of the god. High heaven, with trembling, the dread signal took, and all Olympus to the center shook. The stories of the most ancient gods of different nations sometimes paralleled each other. For instance, the reign of Saturn was called the Golden Age. During his rule, the earth produced subsistence for its inhabitants without cultivation culture. Part of this ancient Greek story parallels part of the ancient gods of the primeval black nation. The black fiery god of the primeval black nation was called Surtur. There is a world luminous, glowing, not to be dwelt in by strangers. It existed before all things. This world is named Muspelheim. Their black god Surtur holds his empire. Surtur shall come at the end of all things. He shall vanquish every god. He shall give up the universe a prey to the flames. At the close of this present world, the great ship Negophara shall be set afloat. The mighty serpent vomits forth floods of poison. The black deity Surtur and his genia invade the perishing universe, and the power of dissolution wraps the whole earth in fire and flame. There will arise out of the sea a new earth most lovely and delightful. Covered it will be with verdure, lush green vegetation, and pleasant fields. There the grain shall spring forth and grow of itself without cultivation. And there lies a parallel between the Greek Saturn and the black Surtur. Both gods usher in a world of peace where manual labor is no longer necessary. A golden age. That being said, let's see how all nations will be involved in the destruction of the old world and the ushering in of a new world of peace and abundance. It all started with Saturn, and it all ends with Surtur. The fall of Saturn, the rise of Surtur, an epic of fire, time, and the forgotten black flame. In the earliest dawn, before Titan walked, before Olympus crowned the sky, before even time took its first breath, there was chaos. A swirling, undivided sea of form and unformed, heat and shadow, life unborn. In this vast womb of all things floated darkness, and with her, chaos, her eternal consort. They were not nothingness. They were everything, undifferentiated. From their heavy union was born the first matter, Terra, the earth. Terra opened her eyes in darkness and called to the sky. And the sky came. He was coelus, vast and shining, veiling her in stars. And Terra, bound in love and storm, bore him children. First among them were Saturn and Titan. Titan was the elder, broad-shouldered and silent as stone. But he yielded the throne to Saturn on one condition. "Swear to devour all sons born of your blood," said Titan. "Lest they rise as you have risen," Saturn agreed, and thus began his reign, the Golden Age, a time of peace, of fruit that fell ripe into the hands of men, of waters that ran sweet and clear, no spear, no sword, no crown, all things were shared, and above all walked Astrea, goddess of justice, veiled in silver, watching with clean eyes. In this first light of civilization, none labored, none bled. Even the wind whispered gently through the boughs, and men lived as gods, needing nothing. Saturn ruled with Rhea, his sister, his queen, yet his oath gnawed at him. One by one, each son she bore, he swallowed whole, until the last. Rhea wept alone in the deep and whispered to the earth, "No more," she said, and the earth answered. The child was hidden. A stone wrapped in cloth was offered to Saturn. He devoured it, and so Jupiter lived, and in time he rose. From caves beneath Crete with wild goats and thunder as his nursemaids, Jupiter ascended the mountain Olympus. And when Titan returned with his 100-handed brothers, those giants of the ancient forge, each with 50 heads and 100 fists, the war of the gods began. Olympus and Othrys, twin thrones of power, roared with wrath. For 10 years lightning cleaved the sky, the seas tossed and groaned, the forests burned, the Cyclopes emerged from exile, forging thunderbolts for Jupiter's hands. One by one the Titans fell. The earth opened and swallowed them whole. Saturn was dethroned, bound, shattered. He fled westward across the shadowed seas into a land that would one day be called Latium. There Janus received him, two-faced king of time, born of Hecate and Coelus. He welcomed Saturn as guest and god. Together they planted the seeds of Roman civilization. Saturn taught them to till the soil, to read the stars, to mark the year by the serpent's endless circle, the Ouroboros, which devours its own tail. And so Saturn, the fallen king, became the bringer of knowledge. His festivals were kept with laughter and license, the Saturnalia, yet always he was drawn in the garb of decay, an old man bent with time, a scythe in one hand, and in the other a child half swallowed. But across the sky, in another myth, another tongue, another continent, forgotten by empire, the fire still burned. Long before the Greeks shaped Saturn's name, long before the Roman tongue could praise or damn, the primeval black nation spoke of another, Surtur, a god not of crops but of cosmic flame, not of senescence but of destruction that bursts, a being shrouded in night, his form blackened by ancient fire, not a symbol of evil but of origin, mystery, elemental power, the first light wrapped in dark skin. His kingdom was not Olympus, nor Latium, nor the Elysian fields. It was Muspelheim, a world luminous, glowing, forbidden to strangers, a place before places, a throne of heat before stars cooled. There he waited, his flaming sword held low, not to conquer, but to purify. And from Muspelheim came the doctrine of cycles. The old worlds die, the new arise. Each age folded into the next like breath into breath. This was not Greek. This was black philosophy, later stolen and reshaped by Indo-Scythian tongues, carried west by Goths and Skalds who forgot the god's name but kept his prophecy. So now ask, who is Saturn? He who ushered in the Golden Age, he who taught men to live without toil, he who devoured his own children to delay the end, he who in exile brought wisdom and fire. And who is Surtur? He who waits at the edge of time, he who will vanquish every god, he who will set the world ablaze, not in wrath but in rebirth, he who will be called a destroyer but is the midwife of worlds. They are not strangers, they are reflections, not Greek and Norse, but two veils over the same face, one remembered through marble and myth, the other buried in fire and ash. At the end of all things it shall come. The wolf shall swallow the sun. The Midgard serpent shall vomit poison. The ship Naglfar, made of dead men's nails, shall set sail. And at the helm Surtur shall rise. Not alone, with him come the genii, not elves, not specters, but ancient spirits of fire, beings born of Africa and Arabia, whose names became Jinn or Deva or Seraph, forgotten emissaries of a black cosmology that preceded Odin, Zeus, and all the false sons of later days. The sky will burn, the earth will tremble, the sea will boil. But this is not apocalypse. This is harvest. The sword clears the rot so the seed may grow, and from the sea will rise a new earth. Green, radiant, abundant, no man shall plow, yet grain shall grow. The rivers shall run with wine. The children of the gods, Vidar, Vali, Modi, Magni, shall rise and remember. 2 humans, hidden during the fire, shall emerge. Dew-fed, they will birth the new race. And above, a daughter-son, born of the devoured queen of fire, shall light the sky. Thus ends the age of gods, not with silence, but with truth. The black flame returns. The world remembers its first fire, not the fire that destroys, but the fire that begins. The black deity Surtur, and how religious rites of all nations prove from their affinity to have all emanated from one primeval faith. In tracing the fiery god Surtur through the lens of Norse mythology, a strange pattern emerges, one that echoes not only through Viking sagas, but deep into the spiritual memory of ancient black civilizations. Described as a black being cloaked in darkness, holding a flaming sword, and destined to set the universe ablaze at the end of time, Surtur is more than just a bringer of destruction. This so-called destroyer may be a rebranded echo of a powerful deity once revered by the primeval black nation. How did a god of fire, rebirth, and cosmic transformation become absorbed into European mythology? And why does his original identity remain unacknowledged? Though rarely admitted, many European mythologies borrow deeply from the spiritual systems of dark-skinned cultures, adapting their symbols, gods, and cosmologies while stripping them of origin and credit. This is not a story of theft alone, but of memory, of a god not lost, but hidden in plain sight. When the Goths, who were a branch of the Chasis or Chusis or Indo-Scots, immigrated from the east and invaded the Roman Empire, they brought with them the Buddhic theology of their ancestors, and as a part of it, they have preserved with a considerable degree of accuracy the doctrine of a succession of worlds. This refers to the belief that time is cyclical. Worlds are created, destroyed, and then reborn, a concept present in both Hinduism and Norse mythology. According to the philosophers, a world luminous, glowing, not to be dwelt in by strangers, existed before all things. This world is named Muspelheim. Their black god Surtur holds his empire. Muspelheim is the primordial fiery realm in mythology, and Surtur is its ruler, a being of flame and destruction. This god is described to be black because he was the god of the primeval black nation, and also because he is hidden in impenetrable darkness. A flaming sword shines in his hand. Here, black is symbolic in 2 ways. 1, it ties Surtur to the earliest mythic representations of divinity from African or black civilizations, and 2, it refers to his domain in impenetrable darkness, mystery, origin, and elemental power. He shall come at the end of all things. He shall vanquish every god. He shall give up the universe a prey to the flames. In mythology, Surtur appears during the apocalypse and sets the world ablaze. This destruction is not evil, but part of a divine reset. Next, in order to Muspelheim, the abode of Surtur, was created another world, which commences with a man and his 3 sons, born from a mysterious cow. This reflects a cosmogony where life begins again from a single family. At the close of the present system, that is in the Mahapralaya of the Hindus, all will be involved in destruction. Mahapralaya means the great dissolution, the end of one cosmic age in Hindu belief. The great ship Nagafara shall be set afloat, the mighty serpent vomits forth floods of poison, the black deity and his genii invade the perishing universe, and the power of dissolution wraps the whole earth in fire and flame. This describes cataclysm, ships of the dead, poisonous sea serpents, and the black god leading the final destruction of the earth. And when that line says, the black deity and his genii invade the perishing universe, it's not talking about little elves or spirits. It's invoking a black god accompanied by powerful spirits from ancient Middle Eastern or African belief systems, and that changes everything. But to destroy in one form is only to reproduce in another. Destruction here is not the end, it is purification and renewal. The great ship Nagafara shall be set afloat, the mighty serpent vomits forth floods of poison, the black deity and his genii invade the perishing universe, and the power of dissolution wraps the whole earth in fire and flame. But to destroy in one form is only to reproduce in another. There will arise out of the sea a new earth most lovely and delightful. Covered it will be with verdure, lush green vegetation, and pleasant fields. There the grain shall spring forth and grow of itself without cultivation. This echoes the rebirth that follows apocalyptic fire, a peaceful and fertile world where nature thrives without human labor. Vidar and Val shall also survive, because neither the flood nor the black conflagration shall do them any harm. These are sons of Odin who outlived the apocalypse, symbolizing justice and renewal. They shall dwell in the plains of Ida, the Hindu Idavrata, where was formerly the residence of the gods, suggesting a shared ethnic cosmology where sacred geography reappears in different traditions. The sons of Thor, Mod, and Main repair thither. Thither come Balder and Hoder from the mansions of the dead. They sit down and converse together. They recall to mind the sufferings which they had formerly undergone. The gods reunite and remember the past, an echo of cyclical time and reflection. Nor do the gods alone tenant the renovated universe, while the fire devours all things. Two persons of the human race, the one male and the other female, lie concealed under a hill. These feed on the dew and propagate so abundantly that the earth is soon peopled with a new race of mortals. This Adam and Eve-like pair survives hidden during the fiery cataclysm and repopulates the new world. The sun also, at once a female and the brilliant monarch of fire before it is devoured by the wolf Fenrir, shall have brought forth a daughter as lovely and resplendent as herself, who shall go in the track formerly trodden by her mother. The brilliant queen of fire will beget a single daughter. Before being swallowed by the wolf, this daughter will follow in her mother's footsteps after the death of the gods. This symbolizes renewal. Even in the heavens, the old sun is consumed, but a daughter's sun rises and continues her mother's journey across the sky. Everything, in short, shall be renovated, and the destruction of one world shall only be the harbinger and a herald to the creation of another. This is the central truth of the passage. Death, fire, and chaos are not the end, but the gateway to beauty, balance, and rebirth. So the black deity is not a mythic villain, but a misunderstood guardian of transformation, one whose flaming sword clears the path for a new world to emerge. And his genii, far from being fictional monsters, represent the forgotten spiritual forces of Africa and Arabia, elemental beings, not unlike the jinn, who once stood at the edges of sacred cosmologies long before Europe gave them new names. What we're seeing in these mythologies may not be invention, but absorption. An ancient god from a black nation swallowed into Norse myth, reimagined through colder eyes. We should not just try to remember Surtur's fire, but to ask who lit it first, and why so many stories have tried to blow it out.
I don't want to set the world on fire.